Hey everyone, I'm Chris Lesniak,
And I'm Rob Byer, and this is.
the Debate Math Podcast. Well, we have finished our first season, and we thought we'd just take a few minutes here to pause and reflect on it and share with you some of our thoughts,
We also wanted to reflect on some things that we've learned, some takeaways, and so much more.
and also give you all a chance to peek behind the curtain and see how these debates come together and what it's like to host a debate.
And also, you can hear some of our thoughts on some of our previous debates as well.
So let's just jump right in here. And Rob, I'm gonna ask you a question off the bat here. So I shared this idea with you like over a year ago. You jumped on board. I don't think you even knew what we were going to get into, and I don't think I fully knew with this whole podcast. But I'm curious, like, what have you learned about this idea of debating and debate math since we've started?
Yeah, I definitely didn't know what we were going to get ourselves into. But I'll tell you, the more that we dove into the debates, the more I realized that debate literally is everywhere, especially in the math class. So, what I've learned is that debate, what I once thought was it was a heated argument, people going at each other one way or another. And what I have come to realize is that that's not really what debate should be or is. And that debate's more of a conversation where two sides are having a conversation about this and they're diving into this topic. And there tends to be some more gray area than there is, like the ones and zeros, very binary conversation. I don't know if anything has changed for you, but that's for me. I am more leaning towards debate and everyday conversations in my own personal work than I ever have.
Yes. Yeah, you've heard me say this before at conferences and things. Like, I want to reclaim the word debate now. I I'm so proud of all of our guests. They've been so thoughtful and open to hearing things from the opposing side, and it's been much more, like you said, of a conversation and meeting in the middle on points. And I think for all of our debates, both sides have had valid points and great things that make me think about it more. So I want to reclaim that word debate and have people think about it more as hearing all the details or more of the details on opposing sides of an issue versus like someone has to win or someone has to be competitive or cutthroat. I learn from debates. I listen to lots of debates and debate podcasts and things, and I learn as they argue, like, oh, there's a point of view I didn't think of before. And I hope our listeners are getting that from our debates.
And all of we've had so many topics in this first season, ranging anywhere from something that's silly, some elementary debates, and some even some secondary debates and post-secondary debates as well. So I'm wondering, throughout the debates that we recorded, like how have your views on certain topics been impacted?
I think I've changed my mind on nearly every single debate we've hosted. I went in thinking that I leaned at least a little bit more one way or the other. And just like I was just saying, so many great points were brought up on both sides that I hadn't fully thought about another side or another layer of things. Like I think about oh gosh, we can go into so many. Like the one on I do, we do, you do, the gradual release, and how I didn't know that there was like a big issue that the one side had with it was because the research behind it had been misinterpreted or used in not correct ways or things like that. And so like I didn't even know. I had to go back and read more and look back further into things, and it took me further back. But I mean, it's happened all the time. Even like, is a hot dog a sandwich? It was a fun debate with Kyle and John and their daughters, and we had a silly fun time. But also, there were things about hot dogs and sandwich definitions that I didn't think about that they brought up, both they and their daughters. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. What about you? How have your views changed?
So I mean, I feel the same as you. It's funny because like every debate, I feel like I have a side, and then as the debate goes on, I think I switched sides three, four, five, 17 times. Just because like there's so many good points made. And it really, the more I've went back and listened to even the first debate with the trapezoids, going into that debate, which is kind of like what started this whole thing. I was super excited about the debate and just to be a part of it, and then not really knowing that there really was a debate. I thought it was kind of weird that there were two different views. And then throughout the whole conversation, both sides made like such a compelling argument that I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah. And then eventually, one side made a more compelling argument to me that resonated the most with me, which made me buy a t-shirt and wear to conferences every time I see Shelby just to poke a little bit. So
Yeah, I have to say that one I went into thinking it was going to be more fun, kind of like a hot dog debate. But then I learned so much about the definitions. And Rob, as you know, we looked up our state definitions, and your state in Pennsylvania and mine in Ohio have different definitions of what a trapezoid is. I didn't know how real it was that we are operating under different definitions in our two states that neighbor each other.
so one thing for me, I kind of sent something to you and a couple other people about this trapezoid debate. And then you asked me to like come on onto this whole conversation, this whole debate podcast, and said, "Hey, let's do this." After the trapezoid, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure where we were going to go with it, and and so I'm wondering, and let's give our listeners a little peek into like what happens behind the scenes here. Can we talk a little bit about like how do we come up with topics?
Yeah, well, now we're better at it now. We have a running document of like ideas for potential debates someday. I wasn't sure quite where to go, but I knew there were a bunch of things in my mind, at least, that I thought were worthy of debate, and they turned out to be some episodes that happened. Um, but I will say a lot of it just comes from conversations. I think a lot about like the AP stats episode we had. It wasn't one that we had been planning for a while, but one of the guests, Bill Phil, was just a friend and a fellow educator of in LA with me, and I was talking to him about the podcast and what would he want to debate, and he instantly said, like, I'm passionate about improving AP stats. And I was like, tell me more. What is that? I don't teach AP stats, so I don't even know. What does that mean? What issues do you have with it? And I was like, let's see if we can find some people who are on both sides of this and put it together. And I think the same thing about the calculus and college debate. Like Robert Kaplinski and I were talking about it, and I was like, "Do you want to do something about open middle and like discussion questions and like what is it you're passionate about debating?" And Robert was like, "I want to talk about calculus and college admissions and like why we overemphasize calculus." And so it's just interesting to hear people talk about things that I don't even think of as like at the top of their mind, but like through conversations, I get to hear things people are passionate about and find people to put together to have this conversation or this debate.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so, like when we were in NCTM New Orleans, I ran into Dr. Childs down there and said, "Hey, this is our podcast idea." And at that point, we only released like I think we released the episode zero, the first episode zero for season one, and we released like back to back episodes because of the timing. And so I talked to him a little bit about like, "Hey, here's this podcast idea," and then so how can we get you on? And immediately he said gradual release of responsibility. Like you do that, I'm in. And so that was in February, and it took several months to even have that conversation a little bit deeper with him. And looking into some of the stuff, and anybody who's listening right now, feel free to look up on YouTube Dr. Childs and gradual release, and just put those four words together, and you will see several different videos of him talking about it. And so that it was interesting how that one came together as well. Um, and like you said, like sometimes it's just organically. So and that's kind of what's fun about it.
Yeah, and I just want to add, it doesn't always happen with people we know or we meet at conferences, but we also have a forum on our website, DebateMath.com, where people have given us suggestions of a topic or a person to reach out to, and we are always looking for people, and I love that.
I want to add too, like it's what's even more fun is when we see people who interact with us on Twitter, uh, and we say, "Oh, this person has a very strong view about this," and then we reach out to that person. And there's one in particular that I'm thinking of that when we met with him, he blew us away. I mean, absolutely blew us away, and we were so excited and about having him on. But it wasn't somebody that we actually knew. It was somebody that interacted and had some really good thoughts and feelings about some things. And we are like, oh, we need to talk more with this person. And they were just fantastic.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, speaking of guests, I think a lot of people and people we've talked to even are nervous at the idea of doing a debate about a topic. Like, I'm not expert enough, or I don't know enough, or it's going to be like serious and cutthroat, or I have to prepare for hours. So can you talk about, like, we have an idea, we have some people in mind. How do we prepare them? How do we ease them into it? What do we do for guests? So what our listeners need to know so that they can be comfortable joining us someday?
So, I mean, you and I have both been guests on other podcasts, and every podcast has like their own structure. And uh, the one thing that I think that we do very, very well, we do with our pre-meets. So every podcast episode that we have, we pre-meet with the guests. And when we first started that, and I know that that was something that you pushed pretty hard. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure the reasoning, but I trusted you, so I was like, let's just okay. And as we went into it, I realized that the necessity, because we're helping support the guests with the structure of the podcast and the structure of the debate. So we meet with every podcast guest, and normally if it's a two pairs of two, we will meet with the two separately. Typically, sometimes all four get on at the same time. But we meet and we talk through some things, talk about their ideas, and help them kind of flesh out their ideas. But then we provide them a structure with, here's an opening statement, and also here are sample opening statements, and we reference, our past podcasts, and also, the debate podcast. It's escaping me right now, Chris. Which one's the one that you talk about?
The Intelligence Squared debate podcast is the one I listen to. Not math related, but great debates.
Yeah, the Intelligence Square podcast is the one Chris listens to, and kind of modeled this whole thing after the idea of it anyway. And so we talk through it with people on what to expect, and then and this has actually been asked of me a lot. So you give them the questions for the questioning round before, right? No, we do not. We absolutely do not. It's very organic. It's very real. They're hearing those questions for the first time in an interview style, and we make sure that they're not gotcha questions. We want a conversation. That's it. We're just trying to get people to talk and share ideas and share their expertise and their opinions and whatever it is that we do. Um, then we also always pause the recording at the end so that way they can gather their thoughts for a closing argument. And we even will send them into, we do everything through Zoom, and we'll send them into breakout rooms so they can have a conversation with their partner and determine one who's going to debate or who's going to do the closing argument. If they're going to go do it, who are going to say what topics and things like that. So it's very supportive. We even actually have people send us their opening statement sometimes,
Yeah, to
which
get
is
some
also
feedback.
super awesome. Yeah, just to get feedback to say, hey, what do you think about this? And we provide them feedback. And Chris, with his background, with your debate background, Chris, I think that helps tremendously because you're able to help them with that.
Yeah.
Is there anything I'm missing on that?
Yeah, no, I'd say very few people actually send us a draft, but we're happy. We're here to support. Like, I've said recently to someone, our job ends once we hit record on the day of record. Like, our Rob and I, our job as hosts is really just helping people feel prepared and to know what they're getting into. And then really just we just ask questions and then listen and then hit stop record, and that's it. But our work is really on the beforehand part. And I want to emphasize, like, for our guests, we say this all the time. The only thing you're preparing is an opening statement, and you have less than 2 minutes, really. So it's like a one-page kind of thing of what are your two or three main arguments, and that's it. And then we just talk in a question round, and that I think that helps put a lot of people at ease, and it's very clear structure, and like there's not a lot to prepare. So we hope people continue to join us and enjoy the structure and don't feel stressed by it.
And Chris, like earlier we talked a little bit about how like the topics came up, and sometimes how the topics come up for us, like we're going to be using, um, that relates directly to a potential guest that we want. But could you talk a little bit about like the biggest struggle in selecting guests as a whole?
So many struggles. I I'd say we were just planning one for season two that I reached out to someone who had written some good thoughts on Twitter, and I reached out to them about being a guest, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to, or I don't want to be like publicly speaking about this." So first of all, we have to find people willing to speak up about things, which isn't everyone, and that's okay. We try to find people with passion for the points of view. Like, if we're gonna have a debate about homework, I don't want you to just like shrug your shoulders and be like, I can go either way. Like, I want to know I want to find some people who have a strong feeling about that topic, and we try to really find a wide range and diversity of guests. And I mean diversity in all ways. Like, can we get a high school teacher and a parent or a administrator? Can we get, different gender and race represented, high school, middle school represented? Like, how can we get as diverse as possible? We only have 2 or 4 guests, so there's not that many people all at once, but can we find a range of people and different points of view? And like, as we brainstorm with people, potential guests, and pre-meet with them, like, can we hear some unique points of view that people really want to listen to? Like we're talking about with I do, we do, you do. I think all 4 guests brought something different to the table that I had not thought about on that topic. And yeah, so we hope you
Yeah,
join
I
us.
agree. Yeah, no, I agree, Chris. Like, and I hope everybody reaches out to us and wants to join because I think, I've been asked a few times. So it's just like, big name people. No, no, like it's not like the big names of math ed. I mean, sometimes it is, but we're trying to get a true diverse, group of people. So the one I remember, like we had a couple teachers on that I ended up seeing at CMC South that were like super excited just to like meet us in person and that wanted to like thank us for allowing them the opportunity to be on and share their voice. And I know one time we had a whole episode about student that it was all about notes and note taking. We had 4 students on, and it was such a fantastic conversation to hearing students talk about notes and hearing students literally argue that no, we couldn't have notes. I never thought I would hear the day that students would argue that. um so and then in going back to the diversity piece, like it's very intentional. Like, we're trying to make sure that everybody's heard. And that's not always, it's not always the easiest thing to do, to actively do that. And I know I've heard many of some of our former guests, and when we go to conferences and stuff, talk about organizations that don't, that they talk the talk but they don't walk the walk. But I think we are actively trying to bring all voices to this podcast. And I think that's another reason why I absolutely love doing this with you.
Thanks. Yeah. And I mean, we also have had many episodes where we had some people in mind, but then someone like backed out and things changed, and there's no
Mhm.
hard feelings. We get it. Like, being on a debate and being recorded is intimidating to some degree. We don't want it to be, but I get it. So like, things are constantly shifting on our end. Sometimes we think we have 4 guests and we have to last minute look for someone or and pull things together. So things are always shifting on our side. And like I said, our work is really on the preparation side before we hit record. But that said, we hope, listeners, that you are thinking of what is something you're passionate about. Can you join us for a future debate? We'd love to meet you or talk with you. Send us a message on Twitter, our DebateMath Pod Twitter account, or go to debatemath.com and submit something on the form there. Rob, I think we should start wrapping this up. We want to keep this short. Do you want to share? Do you have a favorite moment or funniest moment or something from our first season you want to reflect on?
Man, this could go for another 45 minutes if I start talking about all the favorite moments. No, to be honest, they all were so wonderful. Every episode was wonderful. Every episode was so insightful, and I learned so much from literally everybody. And I know we say that at the end of every episode, but honestly, it's the truth. But if I was holding my feet to the fire and let's go ahead and talk about it, I think my first really favorite moment, I have 2. My first one is the memorization debate because my prior work, I was like a consultant coach, working with like 25 school districts in southwestern PA, and I was saying one thing and I firmly believed it. Then we had the debate about memorization, and I stopped saying what I was saying. I came out of that debate. Honestly, I didn't I didn't continue telling everybody what I once believed. I actually showed both sides. And then in several of my sessions that I was running PD sessions and coaching sessions and things like that, we actively talked about the different sides of this debate. And try to come to like a gray area that would help, drive the conversation within each building that I was supporting. So I think that was one of my first favorite moments because it absolutely challenged and changed the way that I thought about things. Um, and it also introduced me to Liesel with her brain-based research, and I have been diving into her work more and more, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I didn't even realize it was out there. So that was shame on me, but I didn't even realize that was there. I was out there. The second one, to be honest, go
I
ahead,
got
go
to
ahead.
see Liesel present at CMC South this year on some of that brain based stuff. It was brilliant. Just a shout out to Liesel.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Liesel. And for those of you who listen to our podcast often, she's been on 3 times. And season two, she'll probably be on again. Because she's absolutely fantastic and she pushes us and our thinking. So we appreciate her so much. The other one to be honest too is the I do, we do, you do. That debate was the first one that I felt was a like what most people would think is a debate. Both sides were very passionate with what they were saying, and very much rooted in the evidence that they were brought to the table. And it was such a strong and good debate. Um, I don't think my thoughts about it changed much, but I definitely learned a ton. And from there, though, like seeing them all, well, yeah, really seeing them all when we went to CMC South and seeing how much they enjoyed each other after such a passionate debate just shows the power of what this whole podcast is about. And it was beautiful. Those are my two. So what
Yeah.
about you?
No, I have to say, like, what just to add on what you're saying there, like the community that it creates when you are in a debate, even with people that you're going against, like through pre-meeting and the actual recording, and we do some follow-up sometimes with people, and it's really the reason why we had our season finale was like there was a community built among these people who came and debated with
Mhm.
us, and it's fun. It builds something special. That's why I do it with my students, why I wrote a book about that, and why we do it with educators. Like it's a fun way to build community and to learn at the same time. And I think that's my favorite. I don't have a favorite episode, Rob. It's like picking your favorite child. I don't have one. But I will say the most exciting moment for me was getting to do a live debate, which is something I've always wanted to do. And I'm glad that, thankful that PCTM, the Pennsylvania Council of Teachers of Mathematics, was able to host us and have us do it. And I hope many more conferences will have us come and host a debate there. Looking at you, CMC and NCTM and all the ones out there. We'd love to do it. I think it was really great. I think people learned a lot, and we got to have questions from the audience, so we can really hear what educators in the room want to ask about more and have those conversations. And it was really rich. And I also love that we got to actually poll the audience before and after, and kind of see how the votes went and how people swayed and things. And I hope to do that a lot more in the future. And I think,
Also, I want to add
yeah,
something real quick too, is you and I did a thing also for Delaware, and that was really cool too,
yeah,
I agree with you that so outside of the podcast, the opportunities that this has presented us, one presenting the live debate at PCTM's conference was absolutely unbelievable. Great experience. But then also being asked to like do some things for Delaware for the folks in Delaware, some of the teachers there, and
yeah,
facilitating those discussions was as exhilarating almost. I mean, there's nothing like a live crowd, but it
yeah.
was as exhilarating being able to work with the folks in Delaware at their conference as well.
Well, and you and I both have worked with a couple graduate classes of math
Hmm.
education who have used an episode as an assignment. Feel free, anyone, to use podcasts however you want, and then have asked like some of them are people we know, and they've reached out and said, "Hey, would you mind zooming in for 20 minutes for a follow-up discussion with my graduate class?" And of course, we're excited to join in and keep the conversation going and hear different points of view and different ideas on it. So yeah, uh, please listen back and share it out. And I think that's it for us for today. Yeah, can wrap up there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I just encourage everyone to keep spreading the word, share it out, reach out to us if you want to join a debate.
And like always, if you can, on Twitter at DebateMathPod, you also can go to the website debatemathpod.com or debatemath.com, sorry. And we have a little click button for a survey. You can pop in and request whether it's hey, this is a great topic, or these are some great people that you should have on. We are open to all of that. So thank you all for listening. We appreciate you all. It's been one heck of a great first
Yeah.
season, and I can't wait to see what season two does.
Ooh, we have lots of coming for you. We have lots planned already, and can't wait to share. Everyone, thank you all for listening. We love you all, and have a great new year.
Yeah, take care. Cheers.